So let's get started. First of all, we're going to use an API that's already out there. That's part of the tutorials for API Management version 4. That's the Bank A API. So here we have a existing REST service, which we can invoke here. And that's we can pass some parameters: loan amount, annual interest rate, term in months. That's going to return as JSON structure with some data back and the result of a calculation. So I'm going to want to create that as a proxy, just to proxy the loan service. So here in my compose, where I go add API and I go compose, I'm going to call it loans. I think I'm going to call it loans v1 for the base path. The version is 1.0. So I'm going to give a description, click next. So at this point, I'm offered the ability to create products. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to create a standalone API. So again, I've got a helpful hint about what I can do with the API editor, which I've totally got. So there's three views in the API editor. You've got design, code, and assemble. So the design view gives you a nice GUI editors for your API. So we have the info section, the ability to enter contact details, licenses, some documentation. We can specify the host if we've already got this hosted. If we've got we're not going to enforce it and we know what it is, or we are going to force it and we've got a DNS entry pointing to our gateway. We can specify the path. We can say what schemes, what it consumes, produces. We can set these flags here to say whether it's testable and enforced. We can change the phase of it from either identified, specified, or realized. We can set some security definitions. We can add paths and definitions and tags here. So this is very kind of a swaggery view, and the UI will guide you through doing that. If you want to do coding, if you're familiar with Swagger, you can click the Code tab, and here we've got the Swagger editor that lets us just type some Swagger in. Straight in there, we can code that up there. And I'll get onto the Assemble tab later. So I want to add a path. So if we look at our Bank A service, we've got a quote path that does a get. So I'm going to click Add, and I'm going to change this to quote. So here we go, we've got our quote path. If I expand that outwards, I get the option to add tags, summary, and so forth. So I'm going to want to add a summary and probably add some parameters in here. So if we look on the invocation, we can see we've got loan amount, annual interest rate, and terms in months are our parameters. So if I click on add parameter here, I can type in loan amount, say that's a required parameter. We can add annual interest rate. We can add term in months. And I'm going to say these are all required. They're located in the query string, so not in the body. And that's it for that API. So I can save that draft. I've not finished working with it yet, but that's a good enough draft for me. So now I might want to make this do something. So I said I was going to proxy it. I really want to proxy it to this address here. So if we take a look at the code tab, first of all, we can see what's been generated. So we've got a quote path here. We've generated a get. We've put the parameters in. So we've kind of worked on that, and that's gone in there. And if I say, oh, actually, I want to edit the code, edit the data here. Switch back to design. I go down and look at my path. Then that's changed. So any changes that happen in code get reflected in design, vice versa. So now I want to actually invoke the backend. So the backend's here. I flick over to the Assemble tab. This is going to tell me about the Assembly tab. I've got that there. So initially, you don't have an assembly. An assembly is something that happens when the API gets invoked, so I'm going to create one. So we've got here the start and the end, and we've got a set of policies we can stick on there and an operation switch. So if we had multiple operations at the moment, we could select different behavior. I want to do an invoke, so I'm going to grab the invoke and drop it on there. And I need to give the invoke some information. So most importantly, I need to give it the target URL. And the target URL is this one here. So I've popped that in there. Okay, I'll give that a save. So that's created my API. So I have a quote path, take 3 parameters. It's then going to invoke the backend with the data that comes in.